Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We have a country at this time which is steeped in problems. When we talk about economic problems, when we talk about the security situation, after more than 101 people were killed in the Peshawar blast. Of course, we also have an opposition which talks about the problems, which talks about the responsibility of these problems. There's a lot of politicking involved. But now that the Prime Minister has called for an APC on these issues where unity is required, where input from the opposition is required, where all parties need to sit together and come to some kind of a direction. We've seen the opposition, mainly the former Prime Minister, Tehreek-e-Insaf, saying that they will not attend the APC. We'll be talking about this. Is it a surprise? Not really. But what does it mean for the future of this country when leaders who constantly berate the process, the political process, they talk about the performance of the government, refuse to be a part of the solution? We'll be talking about that. We will also be talking about the economic problems and of course the difficulties the government is facing as far as the IMF is concerned and its resolve to ensure that things get better for the people of Pakistan. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Gohar Mehsud, who is a journalist. Thank you for being with us today. We also have with us Saif Jamshaid, who's a political analyst. Thank you for joining us today. And Yasir Janjua, who's a security analyst. Thank you for being with us. Gohar Sahab, like I said, we have constantly been told how, there's been critique on the performance of the government as far as the opposition is concerned. There has been, the fact that who should be responsible for where we are. But why is this an opposition, in your opinion, who's refusing to be part of the solution? If we want the country to go in the right direction, if we want there to be some sort of consensus towards a political process that has to continue, we need, all hands on deck. Why is that it's not happening? Of course, a lot of people say it's not a surprise that Imran Khan Saab is refusing to attend, Tehreek-e-Insaf is refusing to attend this APC.
Well, thank you so much, Mahrukh. I would say, first of all, we need to look on our system, that what we are doing or what we have done in the past regarding terrorism and extremism. We have seen same attacks and situations in the past. We have seen the attack on Army Public School. We have, made a national action plan, but we couldn't implement all these things. It's not the incident of today. If we go back and see the history, so here what I think is the problem is in our system and implementation.
But is it a problem, Gohar Sahab, let me interject here. Is it a problem in our system, or is it just an inability of our politicians to get along? Instead of trying to pass the buck. Let me take Saif Saab on this. Saif Saab, is it just the inability of our political leaders to put Pakistan first? What is it?
Thank you for having me here today. Well, the first thing that I'd like to point out here is that the very idea of democracy and the very idea of political dialogue is the integration and solidarity of people. And if we look at the evolution of democracy into modern times, and if we look at how the very initials of democracy can be captured by the Western European countries, the very essence of democracy thrives and survives in dialogue. Now, the issue at hand here is that I'd rather not say it's an issue that talks about national interest, but it's an issue that talks about futile political egos before the national interest. Okay. Now, if we were to point out national interest is what ultimately gives out politics. It's not politics that gives out national interest. The last time that we had such an incident, a day that we cannot forget, that was 16th of December 2016. And lifting those children up was maybe the heaviest burden that this nation was carrying. And then again, we saw 100 plus casualties in Peshawar. Now, if not now, then when? The question remains still, that is this an issue of politics or is this an issue of political egos? I'd like to sum up over here that when you cannot differentiate between politics and statesmanship, that is where the problem arises.
Let me come back to you on that. Yasir, can you hear me?
I can.
Yasir, I don't know if you've been following, but the point is, it's not about, is it about egos in your opinion? Is it about, of course, again, like Saif Saab is saying, he said that, it's about putting the interest of Pakistan first. It's about statesmanship. It's about, looking at the situation as far as default is concerned. For example, there has been, numerous alluding as far as default is concerned, whether it's by the government, whether it's by the opposition. We've seen the opposition come out again and again and say, well, there's threat of default, it's going to default, it's going to. The point is, when you want them to become a part of the solution, the inability to step up, it's not new. Would you agree with this?
I agree, but I have to add something and take you to a different dimension, if you allow me.
Okay.
A few weeks ago, Indian Prime Minister has given a statement that we don't need to fight a war again with Pakistan. Pakistanis will fight between themselves and dismember Pakistan for good this time. It's a shameful statement by a statesman, so-called statesman or a prime minister. However, he's on record, he's done that in the past, and we know the link to this incident and 2014 incident of the APS attack goes back to our neighbor, our eastern neighbor, and there's no doubt about it. They are the ones who are supporting TTP, but how they are supporting it and how they can encourage some kind of action like this to happen, because there's political instability in Pakistan, when there isn't fighting going on between the political parties, when there is complete chaos across the political divide. And now, yes, somebody might say, as two of the participants have been saying, well, because Imran Khan is not going to the table in the APC, so he's to be blamed. However, if you ask his followers, they will say, well, the government should have announced the elections long time ago. And so there are two thoughts, there are two schools of thoughts, and we have to give weight to both schools of thought.
But Yasir Saab, when we talk about announcing elections or not announcing elections is concerned, why is that a prerequisite for the Tehreek-e-Insaf or their followers to take part in the APC? Isn't that a question? I mean, of course, there's recourse to courts. If they want, they can of course go to court on this, and this has been said that they intend to do so. They've already done so in a lot of cases. The point is, if they become a part of this APC on those crucial issues on which they're so fond of talking, on which they're so fond of politicking, why would that be so abhorrent?
Firstly, I'm not a Tehreek-e-Insaf spokesperson, so I don't know what my answer would be.
No, I know. I'm only asking your opinion. I understand, of course, you're not part of it.
What I'm saying is, there's all. What would this APC reach or achieve when we already have a universally agreed or unanimously agreed universal action plan that was agreed after the 2014 attack? So all we need to do is we need to keep implementing that. There's nothing new that you can sit down on the APC. Well, they should. Well, I don't discourage the idea of discussions. As one of the participants was saying, it's always a good idea to have people come and talk to each other. However, the plan.
But isn't this a time to sort of, let me come back to you. Gohar Saab, isn't this a time, on the point that Yasir Saab is making, isn't this a time to revisit our problem areas, our deficiencies, whether it's in the form of institutions that have failed to perform, or it's where we've been remiss?
Yeah, exactly. This is the time that all the political parties, political leadership, even all the state institutions, they must come on one page regarding terrorism and all these extremism things. Because if today they are not coming on one platform, on one page regarding terrorism, are these all situation, I don't think so that we will eliminate all these things in the coming 10 or 15, 20 years. So it is in the better hand of everyone.
Because on the one hand, we talk, when there is an economic crisis of such proportions that we are seeing at this time, we have from time to time talked about an economic charter also. And this is, I'm not saying that this is on the same, I mean, of course, one of the issues is economy. So this is part of, maybe going towards that when we talk about an APC, coming to some sort of common ground, perhaps pointing out areas which are above politicking. Ji Saif Saab.
Mahrukh, my take on that would be that if you look at the current political situation of the economy, we've got almost $3.09 billion in the reserves. And I think that's only enough to support 3 weeks worth oil imports. Now, given this fragile economy, I think for once in these 70 plus years, politics needs to go aside and national interest needs to be brought to the table. Now, like Gohar said, he talked about that particular page that we are still to arrive to. The idea is that it's been more than 70 years and we've never been able to arrive at one particular page. And if you look at how the world is evolving in the race of globalization, Pakistan has been left behind. And if I look at how the other regional economies are having this prosperous growth, they've always had this because there has been never a compromise of sovereign and national interest when it comes to the economy. And economy before politics is something that is the need of time. It's not about which particular political party someone's affiliated to. It's not about what political thought or what political spectrum you have. It's more of what sort of a future you want to see for the generations ahead. Do you want your people to be killed while worshipping? Do you want your children to be massacred in schools, or do you want a sustainable future? Economy is something that must be prioritized. And even if today, if we're talking about the elections, how can we even have elections in such a fragile state of security apparatus? We cannot even have
elections as a precondition.
I think you're absolutely right.
Talking about, you know, 100 primarily, I mean, talking about a massacre, I would say, of such huge proportions that we've seen in Peshawar. Yasir Saab, isn't that true? I mean, when you talk about certainly, and you have mentioned, can you hear me? Yasir Saab, when we talk about having you know, a national action plan in place, having our progress pursuant to that national action plan, isn't it true that the objective realities of 2014 are very different from what the situation is now? Vis-a-vis Afghanistan, vis-a-vis overall, you know, the situation, international situation, our relationships with our, you know, partners, whether our strategic partners or otherwise. And overall, the realities have changed, and perhaps now is the time for us to revisit, our leadership to sit together and revisit what the realities are today and come to some sort of agreement on issues that are above politics.
Right. Mahrukh, let me take you back to at least about 18 months back. When there was no terrorism in Pakistan, Pakistan was absolutely gearing into the right gear and moving into the right direction. GDP growth rate about 6%. And all of a sudden you've seen all this happening and turmoil happening. And now that terrorism has returned to Pakistan, don't you think somebody who's got an agenda, and when I say somebody, these are external forces who are not sincere to Pakistan. And obviously they have handlers inside Pakistan who don't want Pakistan's progress, who want the elections to be delayed. And there's a school of people who are saying it's actually leading to a financial emergency and martial law as well. So people do not want the transfer of power through peaceful means. People want Pakistan to stay in the clutches of IMF and the American clutches, because then they would dictate us the way they want to. And we would be weak and we would take dictation and do whatever they want. Now, this is not in the interest of Pakistan, and the politicians need to sit down and agree that this is harming Pakistan more than anything else. If elections are to be delayed, it's actually not going to help Pakistan. So somebody is doing these terrorism actions to delay the elections so that Pakistan can continue staying in the turmoil.
But why is this about elections? That's what I don't understand. Why is the APC about elections? Why are elections a prerequisite to the APC?
Okay, elections is important because a legitimate government, which will be represented by the people of Pakistan, would go out to the other countries and international community and Pakistanis abroad to start spending money, and we would.
But Yasir, let me come back to you. But you know, like I was saying, Gohar Saab, as far as this government is concerned, first of all, government representative of the people is something that the PTI says. how do we, I mean, how they say it or what they base it on is still unclear, because how is this government not representative of the people of this country? And if elections happen 4 months down the road instead of as ASAP, how is that going to, you know, affect the lives of those families who have lost their people in the Peshawar blast? 101 families and they have been destroyed. And the gravity of that situation, the gravity of the economic situation for those who simply cannot afford 3 meals a day. These are the realities of this country, which the leadership says that they represent. But when they go out of power, they don't represent it anymore. Until they come back into power, they're voted in.
I would say, like, politics or elections are something different, and the incident that happened in Peshawar is totally different. I think that terrorism should not be compared with the elections.
That's what I'm saying. It's not synonymous with any political process.
This is not only related to the current government, it's regarding the whole country. So if anyone can bring elections and these terrorism activities together, I would say this is really not a suitable time. We need to eliminate the extremism and terrorism, and then this is the politics. Elections, it should be done in a month or 3 months or 4 months, but we cannot wait that till that time we will not do anything else.
That's what I'm saying. If you make it, Saif, if you make primarily, isn't that true that what you're saying is, if you hold the elections, you're making your part in this APC or your contribution to these very real national issues conditional upon elections being held?
Absolutely, Mahrukh. I'd second you on that. I'd take you back a little in time. I think you will be able to resonate with it well. During the COVID times, when the pandemic had struck the entire world and when Pakistan was having a severe health crisis and we were short of vaccination, didn't the political process halt? Because national interest of healthcare was prime.
Exactly.
Now, an immediate solution has emerged. A problem has emerged and we are looking for a solution right now, and this time the gravity of the problem is different, but the gravity and the nature of the problem is even more fragile at the moment. Terrorism is not something that can be solved in the next 2 days or in the next 3 days. Terrorism is something that has claimed the lives of more than 70,000 people in this country. Innocent civilians have lost their lives. Military personnel have lost their lives. FC and police has lost their lives. So today, I think the political process needs to subside for a little time. Having a conditional prerequisite to maybe optimize your political returns because certain political sentiment is hyped up, I think that is not good for any democratic process. If you talk about any other democratic country in the world, UK has experienced a great deal of transition. And if you talk about any European democracy, the most fruitful of democracies in the world.
But isn't it true that there's a very clear line in countries when we talk about democracies like, for example, the UK? There's a very clear line when you talk about politics, when you talk about your political parties and their interest, and then there is the national interest. And you see the optics of that very clearly also. Unfortunately, it seems to me that here that line is very much diluted. It's not clear where your political interest ends and where your it crosses into the national interest.
Absolutely, Mahrukh. The political interest, I believe, it begins on the streets and it ends before the parliament. Now, if we look at the parliament, it's all comprised of empty chairs. The parliamentarians are not even sitting there. The job of the parliament is to take the country forward.
And the way politics was, Yasir Sahab, the way politics was played on that issue also, when we talk about participation in the parliament, when we talk about people who were voted in for 5 years, again, it came to a point where no, they don't want to participate. But then again, when it was about pressure, when it was about their own political interest, when it was about the party interest, then they wanted to be a part of the parliament. Isn't that also a case in point of your national, your political party interests reigning over your national interest?
Mahrukh, as I said, and unfortunately, no political party in Pakistan is clean enough to say they are following the two norms of democracy. I would say things here, sitting here, that some people would not like. It's both ways. I mean, when the ruling party did not want to accept their resignations, they did not accept the resignations when they gave the resignation. And now all of a sudden they've been accepted. So both ways you find expediency or their own interest that they are following. Now it's PTI wanted to come back to the parliament, and somehow in a hurry, the other parties, they wanted to send them out, you know. So
Yasir Sahab, what about our security situation at this time? What about our lapses? What about, you know, what are some of the primary areas where you feel, you know, of course the Prime Minister's also talked about it today. He pointed out certain areas where he feels there are security lapses. What is your overall assessment of that?
See, I've always said and maintained armed forces and law enforcement agencies alone cannot ensure the security of the country. This is a complete, that's why we called it a national action plan. It has to be a national drive, and everybody has to participate. So when there is infighting going on, law enforcement agencies and armed forces are doing what they can. They can't map every inch of the land, you know. There are people, there are facilitators who are facilitating people to come into the country or carry out these attacks. So unless we as a nation stand together and be united, we can't do it. But that does not mean there is some lapse in preparedness of the law enforcement agencies or the security forces. They are doing what they can, but they cannot be everywhere. That's the
But
irony.
Yasir, when you talk about unity again, isn't that kind of saying the same thing? We all, you know, I don't think any political party, any political leader wants Pakistan to, or anyone for that matter, would want there to be the kind of security, unfortunately, the kind of, you know, spate of terrorism we are seeing, resurgence or whatever one may want to call it. But the point is, at this time, when we say unity is the order of the day, then I guess it also, like I said, the optics of it also need to be seen. The leaderships at this time of crisis also need to be stepping up above and beyond, you know, their own, whatever their own manifestos, whatever.
I agree. We have to stand above and rise above the political manifestos of our parties and stand up for something which is a common cause. We have a platform, National Action Plan is already there, it is being implemented. It's just that we have to, as a nation, stand up and defeat those defeatist forces who want to delay things because and make terrorism as an excuse. Terrorism should not be an excuse for this country. We are a resilient country. 75 years India has been saying Pakistan is not going to survive. We have been here and we'll be there.
Right. Let me come back to you, Yasir. Please stay with us. I have with me Nayab Gohar Jan, who's from the PPP. Gohar Sahab, I'll come back to you. Ji, Nayab, can you hear me?
I can.
Ji, Nayab, we're talking about the APC and the fact that we are seeing a refusal by the former Prime Minister and his party to attend the APC. Of course, it seems as if it's not a big surprise for, I mean, we are seeing, it was, you know, expected by, it seems. But overall, what is your assessment of where, you know, that this situation, as far as the former Prime Minister is concerned, where his party is concerned, their participation is concerned? Because we have been seeing a lot of criticism. We see it every day leveled against how things should be done. But, you know, when it comes, like I said before, about being part of the solution, there seems to be a categorical no. There's also a lot being said about the elections. And it seems that a prerequisite to his attendance, his participation, his contribution to this APC would be the elections. Am I right?
Absolutely, Mahrukh. Like you said, I think that it is disappointing but not surprising that he decided not to participate in this. I think that this is pretty much the gist of Mr. Imran Khan's politics, which is that whenever there is talk about building consensus being on the same page, strengthening the parliament, talking about national issues in a way that is collaborative, he has always bowed out of that. So there is nothing surprising about that. But what I do have to say, what is extra disappointing for me is that him and his party, not only up until recently were they in power in the province that is being targeted the most, but they are also directly responsible for the rise in this surge in terrorism. And I think it's been spoken about at length. How his policy of appeasement towards terrorists and the types of, how he wanted to settle them in Pakistan, how he let 100 prisoners go, all of this, he is directly responsible. So the fact that he still does not feel that he needs to come and decide, the fact that after such a huge tragedy in Peshawar, he cannot leave his personal ego aside. I think this, for me, is a further new low in his politics. And I was half expecting, maybe thinking that maybe after this huge tragedy, he would change his trajectory. So I think that's it. And then secondly, like you said, I think with him and his politics, it has always been, it's my way or the highway. So I think he's going to do exactly what he has done, which is be a force of division, of polarization, of chaos. And for now, I don't see that he is going to come and sit on the table. And at the end of the day, it's a loss, collectively for our democracy, particularly when it comes to the issue of terrorism.
Nayab, when we talk about, please stay with us, I'll come back to you. I want to also take your input on the economic situation and, what is likely, as the way that it's panning out at this time. Gohar Sahab, when we speak about economy, when we talk about the crisis that we are in the midst of, remittances being a record low, our foreign reserves being so low, all of those things, doesn't it, there was an audio earlier on, I'm not going into whether the authenticity of the audio, I'm not going into, but prima facie, what came out of the audio seemed to indicate that there again, the same thing, that throwing institutions under the bus, when we talk about economy, throwing national interest under the bus doesn't seem to be a big problem.
Exactly. See, if the political leadership don't look on the national interest and the things that are matters mostly to the common people or to the citizen of the Pakistan, we would have facing such issues like as we are talking now about terrorism and economic crisis. These both are the most big and huge issues for Pakistan and Pakistani people. So here again to bring such things are egos that are hurting the Pakistani people, the common people. I would say this is not politics. In my view, politics is for the betterment of the people and to bring up the rules and the laws, but not on the price of the people. So here again the political leadership is playing game blame, and they are keeping the ego and not thinking about the common people. If the situation goes the same, we are talking that since last 60-70 years we couldn't do anything that is like a very a big achievement. We would face the same situation in the coming many years if the political
and
leadership
we're all at risk. We're all Pakistanis. We are, it's about Pakistan first. Again, let me go to Saif Saab. I'll come back to you. Saif Saab, overall, when we talk about, if the former Prime Minister were to say, for example, today that he would attend the APC and walk into the meeting, don't you think that would perhaps show more statesmanship? It would perhaps resonate better with his followers, because it would be, again, even the optics of it would show him again, as it's about statesmanship, like you also said. It's about leadership and less about politicking, less about being a politician and more about being a statesman.
Absolutely, Mahrukh. In fact, the imagery of Khan Saab that I conceptualized was the Khan Saab that I saw at the UN. But the Khan Saab that I see since the past 1 year is a very different Khan Saab altogether. Moving into the actual dynamics of elections as well, I'd be taking you to the realities of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and the previously merged Fatah into the Pakhtunkhwa. Now, if you're going into elections mode, I believe PTI will be certainly aiming for a massive vote bank in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and the surrounding areas. Now, in these circumstances, can the politicians or can the people who have got tickets actually go and campaign in their constituencies? This is a very pragmatic and a very practical question that needs to be thought upon, number one. And number two, if today, for national interest, we subside the elections for maybe a little time, I'm not saying we subside the elections for a year, I'm only saying we subside the elections for 180 days maybe, that's only 6 months. I think that will restore a lot of confidence in the optics of political resolution that maybe Khan Saab wishes to give to his young supporters and followers. So this is my take on it.
Let me come back to you. Yasir Saab, can you hear me?
With due apologies.
Yasir Saab, again, I want to talk about, as far as economy, is concerned, we are at this time grappling with...
I know you want to talk about economy, but then you invite people from political parties and then they start bashing. I just want to put the record straight. Imran Khan, he finished his dharna in 2014 after the APC attacks and he attended the APC. So somebody saying this is absolutely wrong because she's People's Party. So I'm not going to sit here and discuss party politics. The fact remains, now...
Yasir Saab, I'm not asking you for your political opinion. I'm asking you for, I think, your general opinion on security, whether it would be better if all politicians were to attend the APC, whether we should have some sort of agreement on the kind of dire economic issues we are in. I'm not asking you any political question.
Do you think the dire economic issues are going to be, as Saif is saying, 6 months, delaying the elections, and the country is already in a turmoil in last 6 months, 40 rupees?
Yasir, again we are talking about elections somehow. Somehow we are again talking about elections, and I'm not talking...
You see what is going
I
on
can't
with the
hear
dollar and
you.
what is
There's a
going on
problem
with
with
the
audio. I can't hear
So
you.
the problem is, the economic situation in Pakistan is going down and down. Somebody has to take a stock of that. Delaying elections is going to further put Pakistan into turmoil. IMF is not ready to listen to our versions. So we have to take stock of the situation. And terrorism and security is connected to the economic situation. We can't just delineate these things from each other.
You're saying that it has to be, in your opinion, it is about, it should be, in your opinion, a prerequisite for a political leader of Imran Khan's magnitude to attend the APC for elections to become a must right now. That's what you're saying.
No. I'm not for or against him attending or not attending.
There are no two opinions on, Yasir, let me come back to you. There are no two opinions on the fact that we are in the midst of an economic crisis. There are no two opinions on the fact that we are dealing with a issue of terrorism again, after a long time. We are in the midst of it. There are no two opinions upon that, and I think the government has also said so, that they are dealing with challenges on numerous fronts. So the point is just whether it would be beyond it would be wrong to expect a former Prime Minister, a leader of Imran Khan's proportions, by your, by his own grandeur that he talks about, and saying it from a completely apolitical perspective, to attend an APC. That's all. That was all that I was talking about. I want to move on and talk about security issues. I want to move on and talk about the economic issues, where our lapses are. And I think that, I would rather we move in that direction. You are always, your opinion is always very enlightening for us. Let me come back to you. Nayab, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Nayab, I want to move on and talk about economy. There are, as far as economy is concerned, there are no two opinions on the fact that, where dollar is today. It's at an all-time, rupee is at an all-time low, and, the government is grappling with trying to satisfy the IMF. Is there a plan and action? Because, of course, PPP is very much part of this coalition government.
Absolutely. I think so, Mahrukh, here are a couple of things. So there are certain macroeconomic issues that Pakistan has faced, I think, for quite a long period of time. I think the structure in the way that our energy imports are structured, and the fact that locally we haven't divested towards other local and cheaper forms of energy. This is a problem that is not just current, but has gone on for many years, and we're feeling it more right now because of the fact that, of course, it's become more expensive, and it is one of the largest imports that we have. And then
Right.
we have, I think it's not a blame game, but there's nothing wrong with putting things in context as to what the short-term issue is, right? The short-term
Right.
issue is that there was a previous government that had a condition put on it, which was that you need to end the fuel subsidy in order to get back on track with the IMF program, right? And they failed to do that. And so we were derailed from that IMF program, which already wasn't a very generous they hadn't negotiated something very generous in the first place. So when we were derailed and this government came back in, and we were also faced with a lot of political instability, and then we had to get back on track with the IMF program. So I think you have to put that into context that it was not a very easy task. It was a very daunting task. And so right now what is happening is that we have to fulfill these conditions. But what I do see is, and what we are aiming for, you see, once this goes through, we've already been in talks with China, with Saudi Arabia, with a lot of other countries in terms of, the kind of aid and loan that is coming in. So I think there is a plan. On another front, we are also looking at different forms of energy. So as you must have seen, the foreign minister has recently visited Russia, which I think is a huge feat in itself. And, energy imports were under discussion over there as well. So we see that different people, are trying on multiple fronts. A Russian delegation visited a couple of months ago, so I think we need to give it a little bit of time. I know that it is a difficult time, but once the IMF program is back on track and the confidence of the international community in Pakistan's economy is restored, I think there is a lot that we've already done which is in the pipeline that is going to take shape. And provided, this is where the last thing that I'll say is that provided that this is all tied to political stability as well. So let's hope that, the actors that like to create chaos and they like to derail things and they like to spread misinformation about defaults and things like that, hopefully if that is under control, I see things getting better in a couple of months.
Right, let me come back to you. Gohar Sahab, political stability is of course extremely important to economy, and the fact that things overall coming to a point where they start getting better. And in that kind of an environment, we are seeing a political party which is talking about protests again, coming on the streets again. That situation, that background, do you think that's that the government is factoring in that kind of like Nayab said, there seems to be little doubt that things are headed that way as far as the opposition is concerned.
I would like to bring something and mark a question. Like before this government, there was a government of PTI and Imran Khan, and I have seen that many people who were talking and asking about terrorism and extremism, even the parliamentarian Ali Wazir is still in the jail on such kind of things, and many others. All these things came in during his government, and now if he is just insisting for the elections and saying that I'm not agree on anything else, I would say this is the loss of Pakistan. Even we are not only facing the terrorism, we are facing the economic crisis here. So in such situation, if a PTI or any political party, they are not focusing, maybe he might be right, demanding for elections, might be it is constitutional, but the issues that are urgent issues, the pressing issues that must be resolved first. But it doesn't mean that the current government can make it longer and longer and longer, and they go it for years and years, they will rule on Pakistan. But here is the thing that in the current situation, the burning situation are that sit together and resolve the issues. Don't make this as politics and make the people of Pakistan in worse situation.
Ji, Saif Saab, your comments. Unfortunately, we're also running out of time.
Right. Thank you, Mahrukh. My comments would be, even if you look at the international political economy right now, the international political system is based on an interlocking of economic dependencies.
Okay.
Now, just like Nayab said, and I'd like to continue with that, whenever an international financier like the International Monetary Fund gives out a potential bailout package, they talk about some structural adjustment programs. Now, the basic principle of macroeconomic stability, whether it's monetary stability, it's fiscal stability, it is the fact that you need to give in some breathing space to the economy. Now, the IMF program, before getting a green light, finally will be talking about a breathing space. And even, for example, if we delay the elections for 6 months, not for political reasons, we'll have to delay for them for economic reasons as well, because that would be the demand of the IMF. And unfortunately, no matter how hard it is, we need to accept certain conditions from the international political economy before anything else.
Ji, Yasir Saab?
Just like
Ji, Yasir Saab, please, your comments. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. Overall, how you see the situation, the political situation, the economic situation, and of course, as far as the security, we are. Ji.
the economy that drives everything. So our economic situation will have to be improved for our security situation, for our money to buy the weapons and equipment. There is always a need for money. I just have to add one comment for the information I'm sure everybody knows. Saudi finance minister went on to the World Economic Forum and he said, we are no longer going to give deposits to any country. And he was particularly, he did not take names, but he was mentioning towards Egypt and Pakistan in particular, that they are no longer going to give deposits without structural reforms in the countries that are demanding such deposits. So Pakistan has to stand up on its own. It's not going to get those deposits any longer from countries like Saudi Arabia. We'll have to do something ourselves. So whether terrorism is right now a burning issue, even if we do an APC on terrorism, we have to do on the economic situation. The APC should be done on the economic situation because everything in the country boils down to economy and people's livelihoods.
Yeah,
So that's my last
structural
comment.
reforms we've been waiting for a number of years now. Isn't that correct?
Unfortunately, as the international community has been demanding, those structural reforms have not been done. You're right. So the structural reforms should take place. But what I'm saying is the deposits, the way unconditional deposits were coming, they're no longer going to come in from a country like Saudi Arabia. They have said it very clear. The finance ministers are on record.
Right, right. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I'm going to take Nayab's comments before we close. Ji, Nayab.
No, absolutely, Mahrukh. I think that the panel is also on agreement about the interconnected nature of the multifaceted problems that we face. The only thing that I'd like to stress is that, as a political worker, as someone who sees things from a political lens, I just want to stress again that political stability is the cornerstone of all other forms of, economic governance, security-related issues, because as long as politicians do not come and sit on the table, as long as there's not consensus and basic agreement on rules of the game and democracy, I don't think we can move forward. So I really hope that those who currently are not participating in this process do give it a second thought, for the greater good.
Right. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for joining us. Gohar Mehsud Saab, Saif Jamshaid Saab, Yasir Janjua Saab, Nayab Gohar, thank you for being with us. Overall, of course, as far as situation stands today, of course, there are issues in this country. There is national interest, of course, should reign supreme over any political interest. And one hopes that one will get to see that in the opposition of today also. Let's see what happens. Of course, all eyes are on the APC, and we are hopeful that there will be, more some kind of a direction at this time, which will lead to issues like, a direction on issues like security, economy, that confront Pakistan at this time. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.